is that decades later, the person still feels the power of that, is still, in some cases, dominated by it. And in many cases, they still feel responsible for it.
Yes.
Which just is irrational, and yet emotions are not always rational. Kathy, I'm sorry. I know this is difficult for you to go back.
It shouldn't be. I've really worked through it. Yeah. It's just that when it comes up, it's the hiding it and just bearing it alone that still is there when I talk about it.
Were you not able to talk to your parents? Were they completely closed to those kind of problems?
Perhaps if I had, I'm sure that they would have understood, but it was my own guilt that I had disobeyed. I loved my parents, and I respected my parents, and I respected what they said, and because I was in disobedience to them, it wasn't that I was fearful of my father in the sense that he would have ever harmed me. It was just my own
respect for him.
Yeah, and my own fear of hurting them, mostly because of what I did, just disobeying them. I came from a family of 8 children, and they had a lot of kids to watch out for, and I didn't feel close enough to share it with anyone, friends or brothers or sisters or anyone. So
you certainly know today how irrational that guilt is, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's when I look back at that time, the things that I did to cover up what had happened to me, I'm going to be really honest today. I literally, because I knew I was pregnant quite soon after this because of being sick and all of that, I literally tried to trap someone so that it would cover up what happened. Talk about irrational. That was extremely irrational. And if this person is listening today, I just ask you to forgive me. This person will know who he is. Because I was irrational. That's the only way I can say it.
We were desperate.
Desperate.
When you're drowning and you're out in the ocean and the waves are splashing, you grab any little chip that floats by. I mean, you were immature.
I was just a baby that was now carrying a baby, and because I was raped, it was just this dirt. And
did you understand pregnancy? Did you know what was happening to
Absolutely you? Not. In fact, when I had him, when I went into labor with him, I had absolutely no idea that it was going to hurt. I mean, that's as ignorant as I was.
Did you have any prenatal care at all?
Not really. I was sent to a home in Michigan for unwed mothers, and a doctor checked us, but that was all. Yeah. Nothing was explained.
No instruction,
nothing. It was just I was only known by my first name. We were not allowed to give out our last names, and so it was real impersonal. And you were someone that was dirty.
And you felt that way?
Definitely.
Lee, did you feel dirty?
Yes, so often. As I talk and counsel with rape victims, this is the resulting feeling of guilt and dirtiness and shame and such a loss, but it's a strange thing that victims feel guilty.
It's your fault.
Definitely, that's how I felt.
An act of violence perpetrated against your will, and yet you get the blame for it.
I definitely felt it was my fault because I had disobeyed my parents. That compounded it, and so I certainly didn't report it, and just buried the shame. I'm not proud of the fact that I tried to abort my son on my own.
You did attempt to do so.
And also tried to destroy myself in the same means. I mean, I didn't want to live. I did really irrational things. Swallowed a big bottle of aspirin, which, wouldn't have done anything, I'm sure. Swallowed a bottle of ant poison. We lived on a farm.
Aspirin's fatal in large doses. You really took a whole bottle?
Yes. One, just took them, anything, desperate. I jumped out of haystacks. We lived on a farm. I beat my stomach until it was black and blue, just trying to
Patrick, what do you think about when you hear this story? What does it do to you?
Well, it's painful. uh, only because of my relationship with Jesus Christ. And when Mom first told me this, I was so selfish. I was so angry at the man that did this. I wanted revenge. And if he's listening today, I hope he comes to know Jesus. And I hope I see him in heaven. But Mom is very courageous. She went to a home for unwed mothers. She had me signed away. She was a minor. And at the last moment, my grandparents came in, and my grandmother had hid my clothes behind one of the wheels in a car and was going to steal me. You know, they weren't going to give me up. And at the last moment, my grandfather, who I love dearly, changed his mind and said, you know, we're going to take this baby home.
This was after much struggle when I was brought to the home for unwed mothers. This is, for a mother, this should not be hard to understand. There was a bonding. As I was up in that home, I felt alone, as it were, because I was brought to a home that was many miles from my own family. And this bonding happened. And so when he was born, I went through 27 hours of lonely labor. And he was born, and he was whisked away from me. And
Why lonely? Were you alone? Really? Your parents were not there?
no one was there. No one was there.
Nobody. You're 17.
Mm-hmm. God gave me.
It's so sweet that our stories are so similar, because at the same time we were being raped many miles apart, and 2 days apart giving birth to these children as a result of rape. We feel close.
As Kathy experienced this emotionally, and she's struggling to tell the story, do you feel it also? Does this
yes.
bring back your own memories?
Yes, surely, and only as we sit here and look at the beautiful results of what we went through are we so grateful that any attempts to abort these beautiful kids were unsuccessful, and we're so grateful for that.
Kathy, you had the baby, you had Patrick, and you, through this process Patrick was just talking about, you obviously did not give him up. You raised him yourself. Where did the disclosure come? Patrick, I'll ask you. Give your mom a second to breathe.
Okay.
Where did you find out?
Well, I knew as a young child that, first of all, I didn't have a father till I was 3 years old. And the father that I have right now is my father. They were married when I was 3 years old, and he is a wonderful dad. But I had always thought that my mother had entered this relationship willingly. I thought it was a dating situation. I thought she got pregnant. But yet it was when I was 17 years old, she told me that she had been raped. And I just, at that point in my life, I was a rebellious teenager, and I was doing everything I could to combat authority. And Mother, this sent me through the roof. I mean, I was just angry at the world. I wanted revenge. You know, I couldn't understand it, you know. But through, I just want to say something here. If there are ladies out there listening, what my mother went through was tremendous. I mean, the love and commitment that she has shown me is amazing. And I hope I can show that to my children also. But it's not easy. And as a man, I can't even comprehend how she feels. But you do not know how you are affecting the future with abortion. You don't know what, you know, I heard something the other day, whether or not these kids could have turned up to be Ted Bundys, or they could have been President of the United States. We don't know, and I don't think we have the right to decide that realm either.
I would like to just backtrack a little bit on what Pat say, just to talk again about what was happening in that home and how God clearly showed both my father and myself that we were to keep this baby. That night, because I was raised in a Christian home, knew the importance of prayer. And as I had done when I was in labor, the only prayer I said in labor was, "Our Father which art..." And when a contraction would finish, I'd go back. But anyway, that night, I prayed. I just, you know, God, I don't know what to do. My parents don't really want to see this child. And he had become my only friend because of being up there alone. And God supernaturally gave me two of the most distinct dreams that they're clear to me to this day. And they were both alike, even though they were different. After the second one, I sat bolt up in bed and said, "Yes, Lord, I'll take him home and I'll love him." The next morning when my parents came, my father came in the room and he didn't say a word. He said, "Honey," he said, "we're going to take that baby home. Mom and I are going to stand behind you with this." And that's when my mother broke down and began to cry, because behind the spare wheel, she had hidden some baby items. And because she had 8 children, she knew it would not be easy to give up your own flesh and blood. And I honestly didn't talk about the rape until maybe a year before I told Pat. I had buried that thing so deeply, and I never tried to justify myself. Stories went around about me in this little community that would make your hair curl. They made my hair curl. I never once tried to defend myself.
You never explained about
Never, ever.
Until how long?
About 16 years later did I talk about it. I had stuffed this thing in there, primarily because of being disobedient to my father, feeling like it was my fault. I must be this terrible person these people
Was
were
the
talking
boy
about.
still around? I mean, did you have contact with him?
No, well, he was just recently at that time released from a prison.
I see.
And after I came back with Patrick, he then again on another charge was back in prison. So I've never.
You haven't had to deal with him.
No.
Julie, let me ask you a specific question. If somebody came up to you in the context of your work in the pro-life movement and so on, and talked about the rape experience as being different in regard